Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I'm going to talk about what I'm calling my Kids' Choice Stashbuster quilts. So basically, these didn't start out as Stashbuster quilts. What it's been is kind of, without going into the whole long thing, I've got two young boys, they're 3 and 5, and I really want them to get excited about sewing and specifically quilting, but any sewing really. But I've probably made it too clear that that's what I want them to do. So they've kind of been, or the older one specifically, was into it originally and then got a bit resistant to it. It's just, that age, they want to control everything. So anyway, one day I had the kids home, just me and the kids. And then in the post, I got a package of destashed fabrics because I buy fabric from eBay and all sorts of Facebook groups and places like that. So I sometimes get random bundles of fabric arriving. If you've not seen my video about 9 ways to buy cheap fabric for quilting, I'll link to it up there or down below or something like that. But anyway, a whole bunch of fabric arrives. And the kids obviously want to open the packages. They think it's going to be a toy for them. It's not. But anyway, they started having fun throwing fabric around my sewing room and like making piles each, like, oh, I want you to put this in a quilt, I want you to put that in a quilt, kind of thing. And it was becoming a great big mess, but they were playing with the fabric. And so I was kind of like, I'll just let them do that maybe, because at least they were interested in something remotely related to sewing. Anywho, but they kept on going with that for a little longer than I thought it would entertain them, basically. So I said, okay, why don't you guys pick a group of colors each, and then we'll pick fabrics for that and we'll make you a quilt. Because the other thing is, I've been quilting for just over 2 years now, since the first lockdown in the pandemic. But I haven't actually made my boys proper bed quilts of any kind. I made a stroller quilt for one of them. I made like cushions and toys and things like that, but I've never actually made them a quilt, which would seem like the first thing I would do. But I think I've had a kind of like, oh, it has to be special or something. So anyway, letting them pick the fabric. And also what I let them do is kind of direct how things were going to go, has sort of taken the pressure off me. So I gave myself permission to not worry about taste levels or fabric values or colors. I just went with what they wanted for the most part and what I was able to do, and just made something without putting too many sort of limits or judgments on myself. So I still have in my head, I'm going to make them some special quilts that are going to be, I don't know, more difficult or more fancy or more something. But for now, I just wanted to show them something that got finished relatively quickly, that they got some choice in. So that's what these are. So sorry, long intro. So I approached the two quilts slightly differently. So for the older ones, which was the sort of, he picked blue and yellow and a little bit of pink. It was more freeform, kind of like if you imagine, so if you've ever done crumb quilting or if you've seen my videos, the way I do that, crumb quilt blocks, imagine you're a giant and so your fabric is that much tinier. So it's kind of like doing a great big crumb quilt block, but just with bigger pieces of fabric. So I would pull out a fat quarter, a half a meter, a jelly roll strip, fat eighth, I'm not sure what else. Oh, some charm pack squares that he pulled out. Like when I say I pulled out, I sort of gave him like, this is where you can pull from, and he pulled them out. And we just kind of went from there. So he laid out things like he put these squares all in a row together. And then I think I started piecing some of these sections. And then he told me where he wanted the blue to go. And then I pulled out these kind of orphan blocks from something else. And I said, do you want this in your quilt? And he said, yes. And he showed me kind of where, and obviously not everywhere they want things it works, because you need things to line up on one side or the other, the seams and things. So anyway, he had more design choice in his than my younger son with his one, where he mostly fixated on this fabric, the tulip pink fabric with the cats. So I had a large scrap of the purple and green kind of colorway of this. And I had a very small one of the kind of yellow and pink. So when the older one saw that the younger one was having the cats in his, he wanted them in his, but we didn't have as much. So we used a little bit of that. But anyway, so he started mostly with the cats and was telling me where he wanted those to go and stuff.
So that's where you think everything should go, is it?
And this should go.
Mm-hmm.
This should go over here. This should go over here. And this should go over here.
Right.
And these should go over here. And these should go over here.
Right.
And these last ones should go over here.
So basically we should throw everything at it. Is that what you're saying?
So he did have a bit of direction, but not maybe as much as the 5-year-old. So anyway, so there's 2 different styles. So I guess because the yellow and blue one was so freeform and more like a great big crumb quilt block, for the younger one, I started using, and I had some smaller scraps in the colors that he was going for. I started making the blocks in the middle first, and some of them were totally random and similar to the crumb one. And some of them were, I did a couple of these, I think they're called exploding star blocks. It's a Jenny Doan tutorial that I saw. I'll try and find it and link to it. It's basically like a cheats way of doing an economy block sort of thing, I think. Anyway, and some sort of, I did some stripy blocks as well. Anyway, so I had a bunch of blocks, and then I was like, no, you're making too much of a meal of this. This was supposed to be a quick Stashbuster thing. You're supposed to just give them the quilt like relatively quickly so that they can kind of see something finished. So anyway, so for my younger ones, I basically took all the blocks that I'd already made and put them in a column, I guess. And then all the other fabrics that he picked out, I just sort of went out and made sort of strips to kind of try and make it wider and longer. And then I had the scraps, and I did this sort of scrappy, I don't know, is it a border or just an extra section to the quilt? So these strips, they're not any set length. They're just whatever or width, sorry. They're not any set width. They're just whatever I had in scraps, and I just made one long row and then cut it up. And all I was trying to do was try and make whatever I did on one side symmetrical to the other side, pretty much. Whereas with the great big, faster to come together one, frankly, yellow and blue one, I didn't do any of that. So there was a little more measuring in this one. It's kind of just 2 different approaches to it. Still no patterns, still not a lot of stress or thinking about it too much. Just trying to get something finished quickly and give them the satisfaction of having been engaged in it. For the quilting, I took a little bit longer, maybe because I'd spend less time piecing it. On the blue and yellow one, I used lots of different free motion, just trying different things. I did some wavy lines with some stars. I tried to make a rocket in the middle, sort of successfully, not 100%. I did like a comet thing. You can't see it all. I'll try and show you in the video, but he liked it. He could see the rocket. And then for my younger son's one, because I'd taken longer to piece it, I just did straight line in a kind of, I sort of rotated the quilt around, so it was kind of like a diamond, yeah, or a square on, yeah, that's a diamond, yeah, a diamond. And then when it got kind of awkward, I kind of went off in another direction. So I just sort of left the cat face, there's 3 cat faces, and 3 cat faces in the middle of the quilt. And so I left them unquilted and started new diamonds around them, and basically went out from there. So that one was a total pain to quilt. My shoulders, oh my goodness, because my Bernina, which with the big throat space, is in the shop. So it went for an annual service, came back, fine, started quilting with it, And then I got the like 1010 error, main drive sync fail, gears, basically means some threads caught, but I looked everywhere where I could look for thread and I couldn't find it. So I had to go back into the shop and I haven't heard from it. That was Wednesday, it's Monday. So I don't know. Anyway, but we were away for a little totally random caravan holiday thing. It's really hard to explain what this is if you're not in the UK, but it's basically, it's like a holiday park with a bunch of trailers and people go there for a holiday. Anyway, it was a family thing. I didn't choose it. But anyhow, I brought my Janome sewing machine and I quilted this with it there, but it was really hard because the throat space is about half the size of my normal machine. So it was a lot of tugging it around like this and my shoulders were just in pain. Anyway, got it finished. So this is the back of the purple and green quilt. It finished at 69 inches by 75 inches. I backed both quilts with fleece. This one, I had a big piece and then another sort of scrap. And then the blue and yellow one, which finished at 66 inches by 80 inches. I got a bit more scrappy with the fleece backing. I just used what I had and pieced it together, and it came out a little bit random at the edges, but my son doesn't mind. The binding was scrappy as well, so I basically used what was left over from the quilts, especially for the purple and green one. That's all kind of scraps from the rest of it. And for the blue and yellow one, I pulled out a few other strips, like black. I think I had some black binding already made. And then I had to finish, didn't have quite enough. So I had to use some pink and yellow strips just to kind of finish it off. And I thought by this time, because now it's like 2 weeks after they pulled the fabric and stuff, I was like, they don't care. They probably don't even like these colors anymore kind of thing. But when I washed the quilts and they saw them hanging on the line, they got super excited. We wrapped them both up in them when they dried and took them into bed, and they slept in them the first night and they loved them. My youngest, it was his dad's turn to put him to bed that night, and my youngest said to him, or to my husband, said, oh, do we have, oh no, he started off asking, he's got this like woodland wallpaper in his room. Anyway, so he goes, where did you get the wallpaper, Daddy? And he was like, I don't know, your mommy bought it, whatever. And then he says, do you have wallpaper like my quilt? And he's like, no. He's like, could we get some wallpaper like my quilt and put it up in my room? And my husband's like, I think that would be a bit much for the room. But anyway, I guess a question about putting it all over his walls meant he liked the quilt. So I was happy about that. And my oldest is more traditionally vocal and just tells me he loves it. So I'm pleased that, because on my list this year was to make the boys quilts. So I've made them quilts, and now if I want to make them a special quilt for Christmas or something, I can do that, but they'd have one each at least, right? So anyway, so that's my Stashbuster quilts. They were relatively quick, so obviously I was doing 2, but if I was doing 1, I'm sure I could have got it finished in a week. It took me 2.5 weeks to finish everything, piecing them, quilting them, binding them, getting them washed, all of that. So they were pretty quick. They did use a bunch of fabric, some of which really I didn't know what I was going to do with, frankly, and some of which I did buy, I guess, with the boys in mind. Like there's some space fabric in this one. My 5-year-old's totally into space, which is why the rocket and stuff. And so some of that fabric was for him, but I just didn't have a plan. So it did make it done. I've still got some destashing to do, which I'm probably going to get to hopefully in July. But anyway, we've made a small dent. So I hope that's just giving you some ideas. Obviously, it's not a pattern or anything like that. It's just 2 kind of ideas of different ways that you can just have fun, make something low stress, use up some fabric maybe you're not going to use, and maybe get a child in your life a little bit more excited about quilts and things than they were before. So I hope it's useful for somebody. And if you like videos like this, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and leave me a comment and let me know what you thought. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Bye.